Hello everyone, Michael here for Tactica Imperialis. Welcome to today's video. Today is going to be painting and modelling Tau Hobby Update number 6, which I kind of wish was episode 8 for thematic reasons that the title will have probably given away. So we have 4 models to look at today, which is one more than I expected to be showing off when I did the 3,000 subscriber channel update. Still can't believe I'm saying that. So 4 models, and I really hope you like the look of them. And we also have a little bit of talking to do because we've actually finished stage 1. This army basically started off on the route of an idea. Get a fast sight army and make the 8. And then from there, make an army out of it. Step 1 is done. We've finished the 8, which I didn't expect to be saying yet. And now we're ready to move on to stage 2, the making it an army that actually functions part. And I've got a couple of ideas for thematic and potentially workable builds, and you're free to suggest your own ideas in the comments below. Speaking of below, you can go into the description and that will take you to the painting and modelling or to the Tau videos playlist where you can catch up on this series and also check out any other Tau or hobby related work that we've done on the channel in the past. So with all that said, let's get started with the first model for the showcase, Ovesa. So here we have Honor Shastra Ovesa, my Riptide XV104 battlesuit, and I'm really happy with Ovesa. There's one thing that I need to complain about, but that's my own fault for being a moron. So, as you might expect, I've followed the basics of the 8 colour scheme with my own twist. So you're used to this by now. Mephiston red with Trollslayer orange edge highlighting, and then Cantor blue heavily washed, Lothern blue edge highlighting, and a Ard coat or gloss varnish glaze on the jetpack. And then you have some white bits and some black, and then the green chassis. I actually highlighted the chassis for once because it was such a large model I thought I could get away with it. So what have we done to make Ovesa look different? Because it obviously looks different to a standard Riptide. Well, not a lot. What I wanted from Ovesa was for him to be sort of charging forward whilst blocking, because he's got a shield generator, which is this thing right here, and I wanted him to be like running forward whilst blocking, and I got that. I got his pose pretty much how I wanted it. He's leaning forward, striding forward, his gun's down, he's not firing, he's not boosting, he's kind of like he's just walking forwards. The only problem is the base. I put him on his base at the wrong angle. What I should have done is, if I can't really demonstrate what I want to do, but I kind of want to pivot him sort of this way a bit. So as he's actually walking along the long axis of the base as opposed to across a diagonal like the normally posed Riptide is. That's the only thing that's actually bugging me about Ovesa. I really like the pose, and I'm quite happy with the paint scheme. In terms of the whites or the greys, I have of course put them where Ovesa has them. So you've got it on the top of the jetpack, on the head, here. The only actual change, and this is something that I did basically from day one, is the sigils of the Firecast are in white with black lining as opposed to black with white lining. So I'm not going to try and move anything, but if I look at Ovesa's model on the back of the Farside Enclave supplement, the 2 Firecast sigils are in black and the actual recesses are white. It's the only change I've made, and I've done that with every model except Farsight, because I wanted to stay a little bit truer to the Farsight paint scheme. His helmet is white. Funny enough, he doesn't have a sensor vane. Even the helmets that look like that on the Crisis suits, like Bravestorm, have this little sensor vane just off the side of the helmet here. Ovesa doesn't, and I don't know why. It's kind of a weird one. Other than that, there's not a lot to report. I'll just turn around so you can see the Ion Accelerator. I really like the look of the Ion Accelerator. I borrowed a bit from the Ovesa model with the white central bit here, but I added the yellow because that's generally what I do as a weapon coding system. They use a lot more black and red. But the entire thing's pretty much entirely red and black. and I've added a bit of extra colour to it. You can also see over here the fusion blasters. What's a good angle? There. The fusion blasters are on his fist. Which is interesting. It's how the original model looks, so I went with it. And I quite like it, actually. The idea that he sort of can shield bash something and then fusion them in the face at the same time, as opposed to them being mounted, I need to turn it around again, being mounted up here or on here, because that makes it he's just got one weapon arm, and it is a battle suit, so if that arm gets blown off, he'd have no guns. So, yeah, that is Ovesa. Highlighted on the chassis, as I said, which is something I haven't done before, and I'm genuinely really quite happy. The other thing, actually, that I want to point out, sorry about the cough, by the way, it's just come on this morning, is he doesn't have a power core. This is the same thing as with Farsight. I'm just actually going to pull Farsight into shot here. So there's Farsight. He's tiny by comparison, but he's got no power core. You can't see his power core. It's all seemingly contained within his jetpacks. His suit's power core is very much hidden, whereas if you look at someone like Torchstar, because Torchstar is the nearest on my little display stand, you can see massive great power core. Sorry, it's a little bit low, but you can see this massive great power core, and Ovesa doesn't have one. It's kind of an oddity. Especially because he's got a Nova reactor. I'd have thought there'd have been a massive power core on here, kind of like you get on broadsides. But no, not a thing. Anyway, that's Ovesa. There's not a lot I really need to say about him because I didn't do much conversion. I did because okay, this is going to be this is the rant I did it on Adeptus Podcast, and I'm going to bring it up here whilst I'm not going to get laughed at. So on his feet and on his groin leg joints, there are these little protrusions, little squares or triangles that come out of the things, and they're designed to go into little holes in the feet or across this groin plate, and there's even a full-on swivel joint in the stomach. The reason for it is to allow you to make the base build quickly and easily. You don't have to worry about getting the posing right because you can actually just lock it in, and this makes posing easy if you're making the classic build. If you're not making the classic build, however, they become a nightmare. I'm going to have a look at Ovesa's feet and see if I can show it off. I can't. So I can't show you what I mean, but particularly when I was doing Arra'kon, who I'll discuss in a minute, those squares, and also Oblo'tai actually, on the squares, it means that if you take the squares off to try and repose the feet, they don't glue in very well, which means that reposing anything that's got those little protrusions that go into the joints is a nightmare. It's really difficult, and admittedly, I only had to do it with Ovesa's right leg because I had to turn his foot. I only had to do it with that leg, and I think I might have taken off the joints to allow him to repose his legs as well, but not his feet. It's just a bit of a nuisance, and I understand why it's there. I completely understand why it's there, just to allow people to quickly build the model, particularly if they're not very experienced at kit bashing and converting and working with large kits. But it's a pain. It is a pain if you're trying to be unique and do things. In fact, I think all 4 of the models I'm going to be showing off today have this issue. Anyway, I'll finish off talking about Ovesa with his shielded missile drones. So they're here, 1 and 2. They're nothing really special, it's just a missile drone with a shield underneath. I actually realised that the undersides of the shields are actually grey. Oh god, I cacked that up. Oops. Sorry. Need to actually paint the insides of the shield. I completely missed that. They're not the neatest in the world. The simple reason for that is because I built them quickly. You can't get to all the interior details so well, so they're a bit messy. But they'll do. They'll pass, and they're there to die. They're there to die and provide Ovesa with a tiny bit of fire support. So yes, that is Ovesa. Now let's move on and take a look at the other heavy gunner in the 8, Oblo'tai 9-0. Number 6 in the 8 is Shastra Oblo'tai 9-0, the AI engram of Farsight's old mentor, a broadside battlesuit with all of the missiles twin-link tie-your missile pod, twin-link smart missile system, a seeker missile, and a velocity tracker, if I remember correctly. So, this is probably one of my favourite poses in all of the 8, which sounds weird, but I look at my crisis and think, yeah, they look cool. I think Oblo'tai is definitely one of my favourites that I posed myself. I mean, I love Farsight's pose, and I actually found a better one that someone made where they pivoted his head and torso, so it looked like he was looking down the line of the Dawnblade as he charged forward with it pointing forwards, and it looked so sexy. I was like, why didn't I do that? Anyway, so of the poses that I've made, I really like Oblo'tai's because for a standstill murder bot, he's actually looks like he's walking forward and sort of finding a new position, which is pretty good because Oblo'tai obviously is part of a monk car, and that relies on pushing the offensive, mapping the enemy's fallback patterns, which is what Sha'vastos does, and then providing the fire where it's needed. So Oblo'tai has to move, and that's what he's doing. He's moving. So standard paint scheme applies, white in all of the standard places, and I didn't highlight the green. I know I did for Ovesa, and I probably shoulda, coulda, woulda done for Oblo'tai and Arra'kon and Brightsword, who you'll see later, but I didn't. It's fine though, and I've got something I'm quite happy with. Anyway, there's not much really to say because it's the standard sort of stuff. I think this will be the only time I've shown off a missile side on video, because when I showed off my broadside last time, I did him as a rail side, so you haven't actually seen the missile pods up close and personal. So yeah, that is how I painted my high yield missile pods. Of course, there are bits of them that are blue on my other broadside, although I think that might just be the shoulder pads that's actually blue. I don't know if I remember painting these sections blue, I forget. I know this section was definitely red though. So there's not much difference between these and the blue ones, but that's fine. I put the Seeker missile flat as opposed to 90 degrees pointing upwards. I wanted it pointing flat. One, it helps with the sort of silhouette. He looks a bit more sleek if it's like that. And two, I like the idea that he's kind of got it always ready to fire. And because he's coming forward to offer fire support, he's never far enough away that he needs to launch it in some massive swirling arc of destruction. He can just fire it straight into something's face, which is something that's pretty cool. And unless you're running Pathfinders, the only marker lights you have are actually torch stars, so it's quite often he's going to be firing it manually. The Smart Missile System, I don't think I've shown that off either. That's his power core, by the way. This is what I expected on Ovesa. I expected this absolutely whopping great power core to represent the Nova Reactor, but there wasn't. There's more power core on this guy than there is on Ovesa, which kind of caught me off guard. Then again, I suppose if you expose the Nova Reactor to the open air, then you are asking for a little bit of trouble. And besides, that's not actually a power core, that's his particle accelerator, which is kind of cool and actually makes great scientific sense because the railgun is basically fires with magnets and it accelerates the particles. So you can imagine that they're accelerated, particularly if you have the rail rifle, spun around in here to like stupidly high speed and then transmitted through something along the suit into the gun and just blasted out. So you can imagine that's his like ammo storage and charger, which I think is a really cool touch. For the missiles, it makes less sense, and I treat it as a power core when it's on a missile side. But you could also imagine it as maybe supplying extra fuel or thrust to the rockets so they have enough power to do actual damage. Anyway, keep turning. Smart missile system, nice and standard. Oh, some of the reds come off. I don't know why that's happened. I should probably get into using matte varnish. But then again, if I use matte varnish, it counteracts the blue gloss varnish. But just to seal it, I've been told maybe sometimes having a sealant would be a good idea. So something I'll consider in future so this doesn't happen. And that's it, basically. I have now definitely got into the habit of using Arra'kon Flesh Shade as my yellow wash, and I actually quite like it. It's something I'm quite happy using. These are his missile drones. They're not actually his missile drones, they're the other missile drones from my other broadside. Oblo'tai's actual missile drones are still grey. But I only need the one set because I'm going to be using Oblo'tai as my broadside in so many games now over the blue guy. And if I do use the blue guy, then these guys will stand in unless I'm using Oblo'tai as well, and then I'll have to improvise. But that's no problem to me at all. Is there anything I've done unique? Actually, yeah, this is going to be another opportunity for me to talk about these blooming legs. I didn't change them all that much this time, but they're on square joints that go into a hole in the feet. And again, I can't show you because the stabilizers get in the way. But if you want to do custom poses with his legs, it is a little bit awkward. It's not too bad on this guy because a lot of how I posed him based it on the arms to make it look like he was striding, but I think I did a little bit of modification to make him work. You can see I've had to slide his foot around on his bed. You can see the glue streaks, which is where you can tell I've been messing around with posing. So yeah, not a major issue. I'm really happy with Oblo'tai. Like I say, he's one of my favourite models on aesthetic. And now we're probably going to get to my least favourite, just because, well, actually it was completely my fault. So, that's Oblo'tai. Let's take a look at Commander Shas'O. He's not called Commander, he's Shas'O Arra'kon. The penultimate member of the 8 is Shas'O Arra'kon. And if you are an astute player of Tau, you will know that I've completely ballsed this guy up. Let me explain. So, the legs. The legs are, on the Commander, built up of about 5 different pieces. You've got the foot, the lower leg, the upper leg, and then you've got, it's 4 pieces. The foot, the leg, the foot, the lower leg, the upper leg, and the upper leg armor. And that's it. That's how you build the leg. There's also some pieces you can do if you're going Cold Star, which is the Flying Monster Creature variant, but I'm not, so it doesn't matter to me. And when I glued this guy together, I accidentally put his legs on the wrong side. And the way you know I've done this is these pieces of armor. I've brought Sha'vastos Sha'vastos just to show you that's where they're supposed to live. On the back. I've got them on the front. I'm a moron. I'm sorry. I'm a fool. And I'm a disgrace to the greater good. Sorry, Arra'kon. I have an excuse in that I was kind of doing Adeptus Podcastus at the same time, which is not really an excuse, but fine, I'm using it as my excuse. And lore-wise, I'm just going to say that because you're obviously cocooned up in the suit, you're not actually, the Tau aren't tall enough to physically cover all of this length. He's cocooned somewhere in here, head maybe is there, and thus he got his legs blown out from under him by something. And he took a shot that crippled one of his leg joints to the knee. So he's refitted his new suit to have front knee armor so he doesn't get shot in the knee anymore. I'm not going to make the obligatory joke about arrow to the knee, but I just did, so who cares. So anyway, he is armed with a plasma rifle, a cyclic ion blaster, and an air-bursting fragmentation projector. Plasma's over here, cyclic ion is this thingy over here, and the air-bursting is that thing up here. And he's got some random control note, which is actually not a thing on Arra'kon's battlesuit. Can I just point out, this guy is absolutely ludicrously tall. So, I'll bring Sha'vastos back in, move drone. That is Sha'vastos. Sha'vastos is an XV8 crisis suit, stood up straight. Stood up straight, and he's about half as high. He's up to Arra'kon's stomach, I think. When you factor everything but his flamer, he's tiny by comparison. Maybe it's because I built Arra'kon's legs straight so he just looks taller than he's supposed to be. Because he's normally supposed to be built with bent legs and with 1 foot on this little piece of debris. But, oh my god, he's tall. He is so tall. That's something I did also change. Because I wanted Arra'kon to be stood off that debris, I thought I'll change it up a bit. So he stood flat. And this is the other thing I'm not so happy with. I wanted Arra'kon to be a little bit more dynamic than this. Like you can see he's got a little bit of bend in this knee. It might have been better if I actually put the legs on the right way. And it might have actually looked a little bit better. You can see he's kind of got a little bit of spring in his step. But he's very static, even possibly more static than Sha'vastos, who's the guy I brought down for comparison purposes. But what I'm doing is Arra'kon is one of the most critical members of the 8. He does some serious damage, but he also encourages the 8 to review their tactics on holovids after the battle is done. So
I can imagine him being one of the guys who's like, when Farsight's off killing stuff, he's often issuing commands. Sha'vastos does the same. He's relaying orders because he's got a pure Titangram Eurochip. But I can imagine Arra'kon doing the same, particularly if he's not amongst the 8. So I've got him a bit more static, kind of maybe just moving gently across the battlefield, pointing out a target to be eliminated. Now the mistake I made is this hand here. That hand should have been a clenched fist. I realise that now. I should have done that one as a clenched fist, and if I had the talent to take it out and fit a new one in properly, I would. I have it as a clenched fist, so it looks a little bit less weird. If he was jumping around, and I could sort of see it, or if maybe that was in a firing pose, I could maybe imagine it with it stretched out, but I should have had that one as a clenched fist. That's my mistake. It's there primarily for if you go Cold Star. Because if you go Cold Star, the burst cannon is underslung and the missile pods go in here, and you have slightly different jetpack exteriors. So this hand is usually free, which is why you have the open-handed pose. That's a mistake I made. I apologise, my fault. Power core is back here. I should probably finish off the power core because you can see it's very luminescent at the moment. I should probably tone that down a tad. He's got a few extra little boosters here because the jetpack design and the whole structure of the suit is very different. That said though, I do still like Arra'kon as a model. He comes with 2 gun drones. You only get 1 in the box, so I've had to kind of borrow another gun drone to make his. And you can see they're on like flying stands as well. You can see how much taller he is than them. So that's Arra'kon. I don't think there's anything more I need to add other than I actually did put some lighter green on him. Primarily at the hands, I wanted to give some lighter greens to, so I highlighted them. And I did it to the leg armor as well. I seem to have done it on the bigger models, so Riptide and XV805. I probably should have done it on the XV88 if I was being consistent, but I didn't. Sorry. The only other thing, Arra'kon's sensor vanes are so huge that they get in the way of this. I don't really know what this is. I'm assuming it's like a thrust event or something, which means that you can't actually pose his head like sort of a bit more that way because it can't sit next to that. So I had to turn it that way and put the arm a little bit wider. Then again, that position kind of looks alright. So that is Shas'O Arra'kon. And this is where I expected to be ending the review, ending the updates, because I hadn't done number 8. And as I said in the 3,000 subscriber update, he wasn't supposed to be in this video. But he is in this video. Let's take a look at Commander Brightsword. And here he is. The first of the 8 and also the last. Because if you remember, way back to like hobby update number 2 or something, we had a Commander Brightsword and he was blue. And he was ugly as sin. He didn't follow the original build scheme. He wasn't done in the original paint scheme. He was just a guy with 2 fusion blasters. And that was it. And that's all he is now. He's a guy with 2 fusion blasters. But this is Brightsword. And this is where I'm actually going to make the point about making posing out of Crisis suits. Now, the Crisis suit's legs are on ball joints. Their feet are on proper ball joints, which is good. Their legs to their, their upper legs, their groin joint, is not. It's got one of those little triangle things, and you've got to take that off if you want to do something kind of cool, which I had to. This actually was completely by fluke, but you can see there, Brightsword is stood on the remains of a shield drone. He's kind of kicking off of it as he leaps forward with his fusion blades. And that's because I wanted him to be going forward, but also to look different to Torchstar, who was also highly mobile and actually looking in the same direction. In fact, I'll pull Torchstar down. So yeah, there's Torchstar for comparison. And I had to try and find a way to make Brightsword and Torchstar look fundamentally different. Because they're both using very similar leg sets. They're both using paired weapons. They've got quite similar heads. And I had to find a way to make them look different to one another. I'm just going to move this drone back here. And so what I did was I managed to, through a little bit of chopping of bits of his foot, I managed to get Brightsword stood on a shield drone and then pivoted his body so that it was a bit more forwards. So his head is looking a little bit more straight on than Torchstar's, and his arms are posed slightly differently. It's a different right arm. So this one's got a slightly wider bend on the right arm, whereas that one is on Torchstar is completely at 90 degrees. but these two are both the same straight arm. So I turned this one sideways, so it looked like he was jumping forward with it and firing at a forward angle, whereas Torch Star looks like she's leaping to the side and firing at a sideward angle. Admittedly, it would work better if I actually swapped their arms. So Brightsword had his Fusion Blaster flat, and Torch Star's Flamer was straight up. Maybe. Is that it? What is that? Hang on a minute. Something weird going on Torch Star's Flamer there. Don't know what that was. Anyway, she's back. So yeah, I found a way to make the two of them look different enough, whilst also obviously sharing some common themes. The terms of paint scheme, this is something I actually didn't notice the first time, but Brightsword has pure white shoulder pads, whereas Torch Star is also white and red, which is another way to help distinguish them. There's their two power packs, which are actually both yellow with the orange dry brush. And you can sort of see how the scheme has kind of evolved, because Torch Star was the second one we did, and Brightsword is obviously the last. You can see how much darker he is, actually. I'm surprised by how much darker his wash actually ended up, even though it's the same pot of Nuln Oil. I guess I just wanted to make the highlights a little bit more extreme, I suppose. That's probably what it is. So here's a Fusion Blaster, just for your viewing pleasure. And this actually really is a good example to compare to the original Commander Brightsword, because the original Brightsword, I didn't do anything to the jetpacks. I didn't do orange highlighting on my jetpacks when they were the red jetpacks and the blue armor. I only messed with the blue, not the red. But that's a habit I'm going to get out of now. I'm actually going to have orange edge highlighting on my jetpacks going forward, and possibly on the weapons. I mean, that on the Fusion Blaster Brightsword is possibly overkill, but it marks them out as slightly unique because they are the Fusion Blades. I had a thought about making them look like they were actually a sword, so using a flying stand end and have that coming out of here or out of here to look kind of like a sword or like a laser beam, like a lightsaber. But I didn't think that was a good idea, so I ditched that because it would have looked ugly as sin. Anyway, Torch Star, you've done your job. Out you come. Eagle-eyed viewers will also recognize the Warscape shield drone that we had from, again, Hobby Update 2 when we built the original Brightsword. So that's that. Don't need to say anything about that. Haven't actually changed it in the slightest. And now it has an actual person who can use it. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with Brightsword's pose. I still think Oblo'tai is possibly my favourite in terms of aesthetics, but I really like Brightsword, and I also kind of like Sha'vastos. Of the ones I personally have posed, those are my top three. Oblo'tai, Brightsword, Sha'vastos, and then probably Ovesa Torch Star are kind of tied, and then Bravestorm kind of looks a little bit flat, and then there's Arra'kon. I'm not happy with Arra'kon, but I've explained that in his section already, so I won't go back into it here. But, of course, what this all means, what all of this hard work has led to, is this beautiful showcase that I get to do right now. Ladies and gentlemen, it's the 8. It's the entire, completed 8. Shas'O Arra'kon, Honor Shastra Ovesa, Shastra Oblo'tai 9-0, Sub-Commander Torch Star, Commander Brightsword, Shas'O Bravestorm, or Commander Bravestorm, Shas'O Sha'vastos, and Oshova, Commander Farsight. 1,500 points-ish of absolute beauty. This was the entire plan when I started this project. Not just make a Tau army that had Farsight in it. No. The Fire Warriors, they're just a thing that exists. I could care less. And I'll be talking about that a little bit later in my entire plan for the build for this army. This was the goal. All of this that you see laid out before you. The 8. It's actually done. It's actually done. I finished Brightsword last night and I sat down and I just put them all up on display on this shelf. Like, seriously, they've almost got an entire shelf to themselves, and this is quite a big shelf. They've almost got it entirely to themselves. And I just looked at it, I was like, I did that. And the funny thing is, this is the crazy part. when I got to university on the 15th of September, which is about a month before you watch this video, I only had 1, 2, 3, 4 done. I'd bought Ovesa, hadn't started him. I started him the night I got here. And then I bought Oblo'tai, and I did it. Then I bought Arra'kon, and I did it. And then I bought a Crisis Team box, and I did Brightsword. And here we are. This is the whole thing. And I've never been happier with an army than these about 20 models. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. 21 models. I've never been so pleased. So that is the 8, looking sexy as hell. I do have one thing I need to do, and that's to base them in some way. I've put a call out on Twitter if anyone has any ideas of how to make a water world base. Because while this is the 8, the army itself comes from Shah, which is a water gas world thingamajig where the water casts live. And I want the army to be drawn from there, which means I need a basing system that I can repeat over and over that will look like a water world. The problem I'm going to have is I don't just want to use blue. Because if I just paint a bunch of stuff on blues and gloss highlights, it'll work on the 8. And it might actually look really sexy. But if you go blue on blue on blue on blue on blue, as I'll be doing with all my other models, literally every other model apart from these 8 is going to be blue, it won't look as good. I'm just not sure what to do to make a water world base. I mean, I can mix in some greens and make it look like the sea, but I'm not sure. So feel free to let me know in the comments. But also, apologies for the shaky cam. I'm not got the steadiest hands in the world, and normally I try and keep my camera on a stand, but I need to stand up to do this. So that's the 8. You're going to now see a slideshow, which I'm going to narrate over. So we're going to do a slideshow of all of the 8. Some of the models that I've, or some of the photos that I've shared on Twitter that you can just have a look through. And we're going to talk about the build, where we're going to go with the army, what we're planning, and where I think we're going to end up. And that'll be your opportunity to contribute with your thoughts as well. So, behold the 8. Let's talk the build.
Okay, let's talk about the build, because with the 8 done, we're basically on to stage 2 of the tower now. We are going to be taking the core that we've made and making a full army out of it, a full working army out of it. I want to start, and I want to tell you guys, because I'm sure you're going to mention this in the comments, I have no intention of making this army static. The idea, the whole core idea, is basically battlesuit face rush. This is an army that is designed to play aggressively. I don't want to be that guy who plays Tau, sits in a corner and shoots my opponent to death. Because yawn. It's dull, it's uninteractive, it's uninteresting. I don't want to do it. Plus, it's not how Farsight works. So I'm not. So, if you tell me, oh, just swap out the 8 and just take a bunch of Fire Warriors, camp in a corner, take this Ghost Kill stealth formation, blob up, camp in a corner. No, we're not doing that. I have made that executive decision, we're not doing that. So what is the plan? Well, option 1 is one that I sort of brainstormed this morning. It is, in theory, a all battlesuit army. So the build is as follows. A retaliation cadre, led by Arra'kon, with Oblo'tai, Ovesa, and then Sha'vastos, Torchstar, and Brightsword as team leaders. In the 3 crisis teams, the other option would be to use Brightsword there as the commander, but Arra'kon's model doesn't work as an XV8 Shastra because it's an XV805, so I do lose the Fusion Blades if I take that on, but nothing I can do about it, it's fine. Bravestorm and Farsight make up a contingent headquarters, and then I take a rapid insertion force, which is my stealth team, 3 more crisis teams, and another Riptide. Now, I have 2 more crisis suits to do, because Brightsword came in a box of 3. So I can actually get myself up to 9 XV8s. Taking out Bravestorm to be Farsight's bodyguard, I then have to use 8 between basically 6 teams. And that's okay. That's not bad, because Torchstar can run solo. Brightsword, I have a guy ready to go with him. So I have Brightsword and another guy, and that leaves me with six between five, and then I just tag team two more guys, and then run a bunch of solo teams. Torchstar works well as a solo team. Sha'vastos not so much, because he's kind of an all-rounder, but I can make teams that will benefit them, and that's exactly what I intend to do. So, all I'd have to do, in terms of completing the build, will be finish the Crisis team that I've got for Brightsword, and then get another Riptide. Army complete. And that army, I haven't done the actual maths, because it will depend on the individual weapon systems I choose to outfit the Crisis suits with, will probably come in pretty high. It'll probably be 1,500 to 2,000 points, I think, because I'll be adding in another 7 Crisis suits, a Riptide, a Stealth suit. I can probably get a decent amount of points in, and I can put my second broadside into the Retaliation Cadre to deep strike along with Oblo'tai, because it's a unit that you take. Another option, if I want an all battlesuit build, is to get a third broadside and a second Riptide. That will give me a fire-based support cadre, but that isn't as thematic, because that will require the fire-based support cadre of 2 broadsides and the second Riptide to camp in a corner, provide fire support until the army arrives. So let me explain what the army does. So the Retaliation Cadre is a core formation for Farsight, and it's basically a formation that everything deep strikes automatically on turn 2 and has +1 ballistic skill. If I take that, then I have nothing on the board on turn 1, because Farsight will be deep striking as well, thanks to his Warlord trait through Boldness Victory, meaning he won't scatter with Bravestorm. That means I have nothing on the board turn 1. If I take the Rapid Insertion Force, which is an option, then the only thing that's allowed to start on the board is the Stealth team. Everything else in that formation, the 3 Crisis teams and the Riptide, must go into reserve, but they don't scatter and are twin-linked if they land within 6 inches of the Stealth team, but they don't come in automatically. So the way the list would run is as follows. Stealth team infiltrates, doesn't die, and then on turn 2 the Retaliation Cadre drops in. The Stealth team will be carrying a homing beacon, so I can drop things in to cover them, and then things from the Rapid Insertion Force will just start coming in as and when. That's the plan. There is high risk in that, i.e., if the Stealth team gets shot and my opponent is going first, I have nothing on board turn 1 and I lose immediately. Ways to counteract that would be a drone net. Now, a drone net is 16 drones, and whilst they have the option to deep strike because they're jetpack infantry, I can deploy them on board, and then I've got 4 units of drones with Jink and a bunch of extra other rules, which makes them kind of helpful, and they'll all be like Ballistic Skill 5 in the early game. So if I take gun drones and marker drones, they'll be very, very useful. If I do that though, my Retaliation and Rapid Insertion teams do not have drones, because I'll have to commit pretty much all of my drones to making the drone net, because I can't use the shielded missile drones, I can't use regular missile drones to make drone teams. I have to use gun, marker, and shield. Now, I have, up with the 8, there was 21 models, take out the 4 drones that are completely irrelevant because they're missile, that's 17. I then have a good number more, actually take out then the 8, so there's 9, I have 9 normal drones up there. I then have 6 more to build out of my Crisis box that I've just bought. I could probably do it and have a few drones knocking around, but it would mean that my Crisis teams would be basically running completely solo with no drones covering them, and that's not a good thing. It's something I need to consider. I'm also planning on getting a Razor Shark, a assigned aircast asset. I've never had a flyer, so I kind of want to get a flyer, and the Razor Shark is basically my insurance in case Oblo'tai fails, because Oblo'tai has a velocity tracker. I know that, and it's very good for him. Sorry if the volume's getting a bit patchy, by the way. My microphone keeps rotating because it's on my earphones. So yeah, if I get an aircast asset, that means that if Oblo'tai's velocity tracker doesn't work for me, or he gets killed early on, because that's prone to happen, he's on his own with toughness 4 and a 2-up save. So a last cannon is an instant kill, and if I fail to save, the missile launchers are an instant kill. It gives me a way to deal with anti-air, because I'm not planning to tech Brightsword's team to be anti-air. I could do, and let's say if I run Bright Sword alone and then run my other twin fusion guy alone, give him a velocity tracker, and let him have it and go after flyers, I could do that. But I want to have an aircast asset so as I actually use a flyer for once. And the quad ion turret and stuff, the Razor Shark is decent. It's just possibly slightly overcosted because it costs nearly as much as a Riptide. So that's plan A, is to make Retaliation Cadre, Rapid Insertion Force, yada yada yada, and go full battle suit. If I want to use the 8, I have to use a Hunter Cadre, because in terms of battle suits I'll have left over, I'll have 5 Crisis Suits and 1 Broadside. I'd need to buy a second Riptide to make a Retaliation Cadre, and I'd have 3 teams of 1, or 2 teams of 1 and a team of 2, because one guy would have to be promoted to Commander. So I'm not doing that. I'm not going Retaliation Cadre with the 8. So if I take a Hunter Cadre, the build is basically Bright Sword leads the Hunter Cadre because he has a whatchamacallit, the Fusion Blades, which are for commanders only. So he can lead that. There'll be a bodyguard for him if I want to, which is the Twin Fusion guy. I don't have to. I then have my Fireblade, my Strike teams, my Breacher teams, my Stealth team, which is still going to be crucial because of importantness. And hang on a minute. Hang on, no, sorry, hang on. That's my stock build. Ignore everything I just said. Ignore everything. So build with the 8 is a Hunter Cadre with a Commander, a Crisis Bodyguard team of 2, a normal Crisis team of 2. They're my 5 Crisis suits that don't make up the 8. We have my Stealth team, which will have a Teleport Homer, or a homing beacon, my Ghost Keel, my Pathfinders, a Broadside, which is not Oblo'tai, my blue Broadside, and there's an option for a Hammerhead if I choose to run one. I'm thinking about getting a Hammerhead, just so as if I want to take the Fire-based support Cadre, I don't have to buy another Broadside. I can have a Hammerhead take up the spot in Hunter Cadre, and then 2 Broadsides, one of which is Oblo'tai, make up the Fire-based support with Evasa. Contingent Headquarters doesn't exist anymore because I'm running the 8. That's my new command choice. I have my assigned aircast asset, the Razor Shark, and then I have a couple of options, because the Hunter Cadre, the 8, and the aircast asset is legal. I can, if I choose to, invest in a ranged support Cadre. This will require me to buy another Pathfinder team and 2 more Broadsides. Possibly 3 if I don't get, and 3 if I don't get the Hammerhead, 2 if I do. And that will allow me to make a very nice little formation where the Pathfinders are protected by the Broadsides and the Broadsides count Markolites as double. But in combination with the Hunter Cadre, it becomes very campy again. Alternatively, I could go for a Piranha Firestream wing. I would need to get 3 more Piranhas, and the build for that is that they can leave the board and come back fully healed with all of their drones. And that's another option. If I don't take that, then the Piranha can go and join the Hunter Cadre if I so wish. I could as well, if I wanted to run a Retaliation Cadre without the 8. So if I don't take the 8, then I could consider investing in a Counter-Strike Cadre. This is a Pathfinder team and 3 Fire Warrior teams, which could be Strike or Breacher, all in Devilfishes, which are fast on turn 1, and they get bonuses for shooting at objectives. So that's another option, and it allows me to make a build that is aggressive without sacrificing all my Fire Warriors. It gives me some good firepower without taking out the aggro style. So I can take a Retaliation Cadre, as I described earlier, Contingent Headquarters with Farsight and Bravestorm, and then a Counter-Strike Cadre, which allows me to use all of the other stuff, allow me to bulk out my Retaliation Cadre, not buy another Riptide, and then use my Aircast asset as well as a bonus thingy-McJib. So I have plenty of options going forward, and I'm not sure what route I want to go down. The cheapest route is buy another Riptide and done. I could then buy another Crisis team if I want to bulk out the Cadres, but I wouldn't have to. I could have the army ready to go if I just bought a second Riptide. But I don't really want to do that. I like the idea, but I kind of want to get more Crisis teams first. So the quickest route, and possibly the cheapest, is to just buy a Riptide. Alternatively, I could consider investing in the Razor Shark and then using the Hunter Cadre I've already built along with the 8 and then my Aircast asset, and that's another option. That's slightly cheaper. So the cheapest option is to get a Razor Shark. List complete. It won't be the exact list I want because it will be the 8 and then a quite standard Tau army. Like, I'd have to take 3 Fire Warrior teams. I would have to take a Commander into there. I'd have to have some Crisis teams in there. I'd have to be a bit more defensive with it. And I would also have some risk concerning how the 8 runs, because I believe the 8's rules have changed. It used to be that they all had an independent character, which didn't make sense for guys like Voresen and Oblo'tai, but it made sense for everybody else. But I think they changed the rules in an FAQ so that they now have to work as a single unit, which, unless Oblo'tai gains Relentless, means that the unit never moves, and generally they're not well optimized to run together. Brightsword works well with Farsight, who kind of works well with Bravestorm. They're a nice combo team. Sha'vastos, Torchstar, and Arra'kon work quite well together because they've got quite a decent bit of anti-infantry, and Oblo'tai and Voresen do their own thing. I'd have to go and check the FAQ. Someone who wants to do that and let me know in the comments, then they're welcome to do so. So I have a few things to think about going forward, i.e., what is the first step? I think step 1 is going to be get a Razor Shark. I think that's step 1. Get a Razor Shark because I want one. So I can have a flyer and I can play the aggressive list I want and still run the 8 and still have a legal armor with Hunter Cadre. If I want to get some Devilfish and just put the Hunter Cadre elements into it without making a Counter-Strike Cadre, I can still do that. So that's something I'm going to have to think about. So, okay, I've done a lot of rambling. So what's going to be the plan? The plan is get a Razor Shark and then start using the Decurion. Once that's done, we look at how it's working and we consider a second Riptide for the Rapid Insertion Force. Once that's done, assuming we go down that route, then it's basically whatever we want. We possibly get another Crisis team just to help bulk out the numbers of the Retaliation Cadre, if we move into the Retaliation Cadre instead of the Rapid Insertion Force, which is an option. And we just generally work out what we want to do. So that's what I'm thinking. Finish the Crisis team I have for Brightsword, get a Razor Shark, and then reassess and either go down the Riptide route and the Rapid Insertion Force route, or go down the Counter-Strike Cadre route, or go down the Camp in a Corner-ish fire-based support or range support Cadre, or even just get a Piranha Firestream wing and work off of that. I have so many options and I don't really know where to go, so I would appreciate your input in the comments below. Anyway, I've rambled on and this video is actually about 40 odd minutes long, so if you're still here, then I award you many points. So thank you very much for watching the video. I do hope you have enjoyed it. This is probably going to be the last update for a while on the Tau, just because, well, I've spent a lot of money on them this semester already, and my time is going to evaporate. So I'm going to shift my focus to physics now, at least in terms of hobbying, and just use what I've got, apart from the 2 Crisis suits that I've got to finish. So, thank you very much for watching. My name is Michael for Tactica Imperialis, and hopefully you're staring at a beautiful picture of the 8. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.